So I'm here with Tucker Carlson. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, okay. I had a whole plan. I was going to ask questions about Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, future Republican Party. Maybe we'll get into that. But I just listened to the majority of the most recent podcast you did with Jay Dreyer, and it got me thinking about your theological ideas and just where you're at, I guess, with Christianity. I don't know your full background with Christianity and where you are today compared to maybe even 5 or 6 years ago. So I know that you say that you read the Bible every day and that you read through the Bible. I guess where are you at, like, with your faith as far as like Protestant, Catholic, Eastern Orthodox? Like, where do you land on all these issues?
I mean, well, literally, to respond, on the most basic level, I'm at Luke 8, where he casts out Legion, and the demons immediately go to the pigs who kill themselves.
Right.
It's a moment I'm mesmerized by. Yeah. And then the shepherds and the town folk are terrified. And I can't get past how at almost every moment in the New Testament where, God's power is obvious, people are afraid. When every angel shows up, when, Jesus has particularly dramatic healing, people are terrified. When he calms the winds on the lake, et cetera. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. Being afraid is clearly a natural response to seeing God's power. So that's where I am, like, in today's reading. But no, I mean, I don't, I have an instinctive preference for Protestantism because I was born that way, and my family's been Protestant, for all these hundreds of years. And I just grew up in a very kind of pro-Protestant world. It was much more pro-Protestant as a kind of ethnic designation than it was pro-Jesus, which I've finally admitted that to myself. And the denomination I grew up in is a mess. And, I would never tell people to join the church that I grew up in, of course. But I do still strongly feel that our relationship with God is a direct relationship, and that was the point of Jesus coming. This is my reading. And I have an instinctive distrust of human institutions, including churches. And I think they're pretty easy to subvert. And so I saw it in my own church, which was totally subverted. And so I hate to kind of get into the sectarian conversation, I guess. There are people I respect. This is such a namby-pamby answer, but it's true. There are Catholics I really look to for spiritual guidance. Same with the Orthodox. Still some Protestants I feel that way about. So, I don't know. Hard to see myself like converting to some new branch of Christianity and declaring the others invalid, I guess is what I would say.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, you grew up in the Episcopalian church, right?
Yep.
So what happened to the Episcopalian church? Because that's one church that I grew up sort of Baptist, non-denominational, E-free. So I don't really know. I learned that they existed like 5 years ago. So I don't know much about them, but I know that they're really far off biblical Christianity.
Well, they kind of built the country. I mean, actually, it was the denomination of most Virginians, the earliest kind of successful European settlement. I know that the Plymouth colony would disagree, but like Virginia was a functioning place. And it was, it was Church of England in the United States, known as the Episcopal Church in the United States, ECUSA. And really, I think it, by far the most common denomination of American presidents. It was kind of the ruling class religion. Reform Judaism was based on it, actually, weirdly. And there's just a lot to say about it. It's intertwined with the history of the country going back hundreds of years. And I do think that was the problem. If you talk to individual Episcopalians who are still Christian, they'll say, well, it was letting women become ministers, which, I agree that was a bad decision. Obviously, and endorsing abortion is obviously evil. Their position on sexuality and gender, obviously evil also. But I think the core problem is more fundamental. I think it was affluence and power. And I think there's a reason Jesus said it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel through the eye of a needle, because there is something about the comforts and concerns of this world that drown out the gospel. And that's just a fact. And so the closer that church got to the center of power, like when they built National Cathedral in Washington, which really is the national cathedral, it's the country's cathedral, it's an Episcopal church, that, you start doing stuff like that, It's a beautiful church, but I think those were the seeds of its destruction. That's my sense. And I believe that because I've seen the effect of power and money on people. I felt it on myself, by the way. And, the closer you get to the beating heart of this world, the more you're corrupted, the more temptation there is, the more your attention wanders to the irrelevant from the eternal, and it just corrupts you. Wealth and power corrupt. I mean, that is one of the main subplots of the New Testament, I think. So
yeah, it seems like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a question that I've been trying to figure out too, like the relationship between church and state. I mean, I'm Calvinist, and so we have, I don't know, there's an interesting history there, and I don't fully even understand the Calvinist perspective, but I also love like G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis. So I kind of feel like I'm in a similar camp where people from the different, Catholic or from different Protestant churches, I have a lot of respect for them. But the relationship between the church and the state is one that's incredibly confusing to me, because I think like intuitively I agree with what you're saying, that it seems like the closer that the church gets to power, it just completely falls apart and the doctrines fall away, and then people kind of go crazy. And then also, but then when that happens, like we're in like a liberal, I guess I'm in liberal Madison, Wisconsin. So Madison, Wisconsin, as like a microcosm, as a city, has been run by, liberal progressive policies forever. And I don't like that at all. It's kind of ruined everything. And so like, where is the church in all of this? Like, how can the church, and I don't know if it's even possible, maintain power without becoming corrupted? I don't know if that's possible.
It's a great question. And let me just expand on what you just said. The point of those policies is to destroy. There's the point of moving, quote, affordable housing into your neighborhood is not to help the people who live in that housing, but to destroy the lives of the people who were there before.
Yes.
Of course. The point of our drug policy is to inspire chaos and death. Our homeless policy, same thing. So like there's a certain brand of what we call politics. It's not really politics. It's a spiritual disposition. It's, darkness and death. And I think it now, 60 years after this started, I think we can say conclusively, none of these liberation movements liberate, they kill and they destroy. So like what happened in Madison is the same thing that happened to almost every other American city. And it kind of, they did what they intended to do, which was destroy. Yeah. So, so I would say that. What's the answer to that? I mean, look, the last thing, it's bad to destroy Madison, it's bad to destroy Baltimore and Detroit and New York, but to destroy a church is bad in a different way, on a different level, I would say. And is it good for a church to become a state? Well, we actually have an example of that in Italy, and I don't think it's been good. I mean, there's so much about Catholicism that I respect, and certainly some of my closest friends are observant Catholics, daily mass goers, beautiful people whose counsel I seek regularly. But I don't think anyone would endorse, the workings of the Catholic Church, the intrigue, the murder, the deception. It's just like every human institution is marked by intrigue, murder, and deception, because that's what humans wind up doing. Right. But when you see it happen to a church, you're like, that's especially sad. And it certainly happened to that church. So I don't think, compare that Christianity, the Christianity of Acts, when there was no church. There were church leaders, there were apostles, but they were under fire from the religious authorities in Jerusalem, and then later from the Roman Empire, from its authorities. I mean, they were more under the gun than maybe any religious movement ever has been, and they were better for it. I mean, Jesus promises the disciples when he sends them out repeatedly, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get beaten in the synagogues, and then you're going to get hauled into court, and you're going to have to argue for your life. And the Holy Spirit will give you your defense, will give you the words. But one thing we know for a fact is that they're going to try and kill you because you come in my name. I mean, that is just an explicit promise made again and again throughout the Gospels. So that tells you the fundamental relationship between the church and the state. It's antagonistic. And you still have to render unto Caesar what's his, but you shouldn't imagine there's ever going to be anything but hate coming from temporal authorities toward sincere Christians. That again, Jesus says it again and again and again. So I just don't think we can escape that. And anyone who's like, no, we have a Christian government, is probably lying.
So, okay, that's interesting. And so, like, what do you say about the Constitution? You know, obviously, there's the argument that the Constitution isn't a Christian document, and I don't believe that. But even so, let's say like none of that is let's say the Constitution is not a Christian document. It was built or it was created within a culture that was deeply saturated in Christian presuppositions. So, you know, it wouldn't have, the Constitution wouldn't exist without Christianity. Everybody knows that. Or, I mean, I wasn't taught that in school. I learned that later on, but I think that that's pretty much common knowledge. So, like, what do you, I guess, I don't know. What you were saying was reminding me of Bonhoeffer saying that the church is the conscience of the state, that it sort of holds the state accountable. And obviously there's going to be a antagonistic relationship there. And this is, I'm asking you like impossible questions kind of, but what's
they're not impossible. They're the like central questions.
That's what I'm like. What's the harmony?
It's really simple. You don't want a Christian government. You want Christian citizens and Christian voters.
Sure.
On whose behalf the government operates. And so, you know, if it's a responsive system, then it will reflect their values and views. Right. I mean, that's what you want.
Yeah.
But I mean, we are warned again and again and again, not just against worshiping money and power, but to eschew them, to give them up. You know, someone asks for, you know, your cloak, give them your shirt kind of thing. Yeah. Like it couldn't be more explicit. So the idea that the church's job is to accumulate wealth and power, like what book are you reading exactly? What example are you pointing to where that's worked? I don't understand it. And people being who they are, all of us, including me, they just naturally desire wealth and power. Or I certainly have in my life. I hope I don't sound judgmental at all. I'm doing my best to see other people's faults through the lens of my own. Like I know what you're doing because I've done it and I still have the desire to do it. So I'm not judging you, but I am recognizing what's inherent to people, which is this like desire to accumulate money and control over other people. And so that's the last thing you want anywhere near your church. And my read of it as a non-theologian, I mean, to say I'm a non-theologian is to understate it dramatically. I know nothing about theology. I don't want to know. But just the reading of what Jesus says when he says, you know, whose face is on the coin? Caesar's, you know, give to Caesar what's Caesar's, you know, give to God what's God. He's describing not the merger of church and state, but their coexistence. That's what he's saying. He's not just describing theocracy. It's kind of the opposite. It's like they've got, you know, their thing, they're the government and give them what they're due, and God has his thing. And by the way, if Jesus wanted a theocracy, I suppose he wouldn't have ridden into Jerusalem on a donkey, right? Right. He would have come as the people of the time expected him to come, which was as not just a Messiah, but a ruler. And he didn't. So I don't know. I don't understand. I understand the frustration, understand it. I mean, I more than understand it. I've been obsessed with it my entire adult life, with the degradation of our civilization and specifically of our country. Like, how did this happen? And it's super obvious as the population became more secular, the country collapsed. I mean, there's a 1-to-1 correlation. So I understand why people are like, okay, well then we need a Christian government, but it's almost like an oxymoron. It's like you're referring to a religion that prohibits you from doing what you're suggesting. Right. That's my read anyway.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So then what do you do to bring about the Christian, I don't know, revolution that isn't entirely focused on power? Because there's like, I don't want to critique all of the Christian nationalist ideas, because I think that there are some good ideas in the Christian nationalist movement, but sort of like installing a Christian prince and king, like you've mentioned, we kind of seen some of this stuff before, and it doesn't necessarily work. And yet on the sort of base level, like you had the guy on that was talking about, I think it was like 6 cents to 8 cents per dollar in the church in America is going outside of the walls of the church. And so that sort of like libertarian, low church, non-denominational thing where it's like, well, we'll just have a sort of groundswell movement where people will kind of become Christians and then they'll vote in accordance with their conscience. Like that has created these like huge mega church institutions that are the same as what the Catholic Church was during the Reformation, power hungry, money hungry. That's kind of a simplistic way of saying it, but what do we do about that?
I mean, there's really one answer to all of these problems, which is just become closer to God yourself.
Sure.
I mean, I just know from living 57 years in the world with other people that no problem is ever resolved until you acknowledge and then focus on your own role in causing it. Mm-hmm. If you have a dispute with someone and you're a normal person like me, you spend 99% of your time thinking about what that person did wrong. Unless you flip it and start meditating on what you did wrong, that will never be resolved. That's just a fact of life. That's not a Christian observation or theological precept. It's just like, it's an observable fact. So every good thing begins with you. That's why it's forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. It begins with an acknowledgement of your sin, how you've fallen short and what you're going to do about it. Nothing is fixed. And that's one of the frustrations I have with politics, which I've obviously, been witness to for all these years. My job has been to watch politics. The whole conversation is predicated on how you suck. And the truth is you do suck, but I'm the one who actually sucks when it comes down to it. And so I'm just like rejecting that whole idea. Any conversation, I mean, it really is, I don't know if you're married or not, but like the classic marital argument is each person trying to convince the other person that the other person sucks.
Yeah.
You did this, you did this, you did this. And that's like, those can go on until you get divorced. In fact, they do. Yeah. And so the only way to fix anything is to sincerely say, here's what I did wrong and here's how sorry I'm sorry if I offended you, but I did these three things. I demonstrably feel terrible about them. Here's why they were wrong. And the more sincere that apology is, the closer you are to healing that relationship and resolving the conflict. And I just think that is true for all human interaction, including political interaction. So you have to begin with, here's what I did wrong. And I hate doing it, just like everybody else, well, I'll speak for myself. I don't like doing that. I'm so much more comfortable with how much you suck, but that is fruitless. And so I really try and force myself to always say, how disappointed I am in my own behavior and mean it and try to mean it,
I worked
that's
for
how you fix America is when people, by the way, John the Baptist shows up. He doesn't just, everyone forgets, he doesn't just baptize people like you're getting the Jordan.
He calls them to repentance.
Confess, exactly. Yeah. You repent. And that's what the country needs. That's what we all need.
It's also really weird that he baptizes people prior to the resurrection. My wife and I were just talking about that recently. We don't really know why. And also that Jesus doesn't baptize anybody.
Yes.
Have you ever thought about that? Do you have any insight on that?
It's funny. I thought about it last night. I thought about what Jesus says in Luke, because I'm reading Luke right now.
Yeah.
Jesus says, you thought that John the Baptist, he a number of times he always starts talking about John the Baptist. Yeah. And then he talks to John the Baptist through their respective disciples. And it's just interesting. Jesus is very focused on John the Baptist. Obviously, their mothers are cousins. Like there's this close connection, but then John the Baptist it's not really explained. Nothing about John the Baptist is explained at all. Right. Other than, is he Elijah or not? Whatever that means. I don't know. But it's clear this is a very significant figure.
Yeah. Well, Jesus says that he's greater than him. Jesus, he says he's greater than me. Yeah.
He's greater than any man. Right. But compared to the kingdom of heaven, everyone's better than him. But anyway, but the point is, I don't know. Of course, I don't understand that. I don't understand it at all. But on the most cursory level, I know that people don't get baptism until they get repentance. And I do think, and that's encoded in the Lord's Prayer as well, you don't get forgiven until you forgive and admit what you've done. And I feel like that's applicable to nations as well as individuals and churches. And that is the thing that people need to do, is repent. And all our system is completely rotten and evil. That's just obvious. We've gotten to the point where you kind of can't deny it. Look at the fruit it bears. It's rotten and evil. So therefore the system is rotten and evil. How do we have the system? Because all of us are participating in it and to some extent benefiting from it, even as we're being destroyed by it. And so to admit that, and you can't, the life that I live, it's just like so easy to blame everything on Mark Levin. And secretly, of course, I do blame everything on Mark Levin, but that's totally wrong. We should be praying sincerely praying for Mark Levin every single day, and not in a patronizing way, like, thank you, God, for not making me Mark Levin. That's the Pharisee way. Right. But truly, how did I how did I add to a world where Mark Levin got to take us to war with Iran? And I just want to say I'm sorry for that.
Wait, so you mentioned this a lot, like the system is broken, and I think I agree with it, but what specifically, I do agree with it. I think the system is, I guess what specifically do you mean by the system?
I'll tell you exactly what I mean. I'll tell you exactly what I mean. So the most important thing about any system is who runs it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was driven crazy by 10 years ago when Trump emerged was the use of this term populism. And I supported Trump, generally speaking, from the very first days, and said so because I had a public job at that point. And people would say, "Oh, you're a populist." And I would always try to explain, no, I don't believe in populism. It doesn't exist. Every system is hierarchical. In the animal kingdom, that is also true. It's true with dogs. It's true with people. We always choose leaders, or they, self-select, or whatever the process is. But not everyone has the same authority in any society. It's always a pyramid shape. So the question is not, are you getting a hierarchical structure? Yes, you are. The question is, who's at the top of the hierarchy? And you answer that question in a pretty intentional way by creating a system of education, mostly, but not just, to populate it. And every successful country does this. Like, how do we train up our leaders? That's the question. And as a product, having been around that a lot, including as a child, I am totally convinced that our system is producing exactly the wrong kind of people. And so you're winding up with people in charge who have all the credentials to rule. They went to the right schools. They had the right jobs. They say the right words, but they're totally incapable of making wise long-term decisions about anything, including their own lives. Like, our system produces mediocrity. And how and why does it do that? That's my obsession personally, just because I care about the country and I live here and I've got a lot of kids. So it's like, I'm not going anywhere. We have to be ruled by better people. It's not that any of our systems is inherently unworkable. They're all flawed, of course, but like representative democracy, the Federal Reserve, our higher education system, like all of these things could work, or much better than they do work. It's just they are producing a leadership class. Like, you wind up with people like Barack Obama in charge, or I will say Trump. It's like, what? He's not a product of that system, but he is a product of an economy that rewards bankruptcy.
Well, in some way, he went to Ivy League, right?
For sure. Yeah. But I also I do feel like the way the economy is part of that. So like, the richest people are always going to have the most influence. So who does your economic system reward? Who gets richest? And I just noticed, with some exceptions, but very few, the people who get the richest in our society are people who didn't create anything at all. They're usually rent seekers or just parasites on other people's activity. And they certainly haven't done anything demonstrable to improve the civilization. So that's just an inherent flaw. And we can't get better until we fix that. The people who get richest in general, with some anomalies, but in general, have to be people who add the most. They can't be people who take the most. You can't live in a country where Bill Ackman, who makes billions betting against productive companies, short selling, that guy makes billions of dollars. It's not even against Bill Ackman, but like someone with a kind of mediocre intelligence, no creativity, who's got predatory instincts and no shame. If that guy winds up making billions, you need to start over. And I don't care what you call it. Oh, you're a socialist. Well, okay. I don't care what you call it.
No, it's not. I read your book. I just read your book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The Ship of Fools, which came out when I was like a senior in high school. And I was, as I was reading it, I was angry that they didn't make us read that in school, but they would never make us read that in school. But I was like, the points that you're making, then I listened back to the interview that you did with Ben Shapiro during that time frame. I think you did an interview with him, and Shapiro couldn't handle the fact that you said that truckers shouldn't be fired in favor of automated trucking or something like that. And that I think that Jeremy Boring mentioned that later on too. But anyways, all that is to say, a lot of the ideas that you were talking about, you can find them in G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, who are hardcore conservatives and not full-on capitalists. That's not the equivocation right now, is that to be a conservative is to be a capitalist, full on ungoverned capitalist. And I don't know, one, do you see, is that an accurate picture or what?
I mean, I'm not even sure what capitalism means. We don't live in a structure that bears any resemblance to the free market capitalism I was promised. It's a it's a cluster of monopolies with government contracts. Like it's leeching off taxpayers or future taxpayers through debt. So like it's not free market capitalism, but whatever it doesn't matter what you call it. This is not a religion. It's an economic system. And what's its point? Its point is not to make Ben Shapiro richer. By the way, Ben Shapiro got into Harvard somehow. A world in which Ben Shapiro, who's not that bright, obviously, gets into Harvard, you just know that the system's not working. Like the whole promise is meritocracy. It's not meritocracy when Ben Shapiro gets into Harvard, okay, period. It's something else. So, but that's also true for our economic system. It's like if the result of the economic system is to make the most aggressive, most dishonest people the richest, why would you want that? I don't understand, because there's some magic that you're serving, the invisible hand or something. It's not even true, but like, let's just say it was true. It's just to make any sense. And he knows it. I mean, Ben's not bright, but he's not that stupid. And he knows that the point of this is not to hew to some principle of free market economics. The point is to like enrich Ben Shapiro and the people who he likes. And but I don't have to go along with that. And you can compare me to Hugo Chavez all you want, or say I'm a communist or whatever. I just don't care anymore. Just like I don't care about any of these. You're an anti-Semite. No, I'm not. You're a left winger. No, I'm not. I don't care. I just want outcomes that preserve human decency and that keep a really good system, which long precedes Ben Shapiro or his family's arrival here, long precedes by hundreds of years, that keeps that intact. Like that's all I want. And I don't think that's too much to ask. And I don't know why I'd ever want to take lectures from, by the way, Ben Shapiro, who's like Mr. Capitalist guy, couldn't even keep his own company afloat. He's like a bad capitalist.
Right.
I mean,
Right. No, well, and it's also because they lied to the people who were paying for a subscription. I paid for a Daily Wire subscription for years. And as time went on, they made some of the worst movies in the history of movies. Like I've never seen worse movies. You've probably never watched them and you shouldn't, but they were bad. And they just kept throwing money into that. But yeah. And he just lied to everybody about what was happening behind the scenes there.
But that's the guy we're getting a lecture about capitalism from, who tanked his own company. Yeah. I mean, am I going to take real estate advice from the homeless? I mean, like, what are you even talking about? Shh, quiet, adults are talking. I mean, I don't know. I hate to even mention Ben Shapiro because it's like such a straw man. Like, who cares what that guy thinks? I mean, it's just not relevant to anything. But he is a kind of stand-in for a whole class of people who won't even defend the system they're benefiting from, will instead attack anybody who questions it, which is always the tell. Like if you were to come to me and say, hey, your views are kind of crazy. Why do you have those crazy views? I would say, I'd probably admit some of them are maybe a little crazy, but I have reasons for holding them. And here's what they are. I wouldn't immediately turn and say you're a racist. I wouldn't attack you for asking me. Like I would try to make an affirmative defense of what I believe, but they never will, whether it's on Iran or any of these topics. And that tells me that like this is not, and that is our ruling class. That is who runs the country. They make the decisions. We got a regime change war in Iran, not because the public wanted it, but because they wanted it. We tax working for a living, getting paid a salary, which most people, including me, that's all that's available to them. We tax it at twice the rate we do investing. What? We tax labor at twice the rate of capital. Like, who thought that up? That's so obviously immoral and sick, but no one even questions it because that's the preference of the people who run the country. So my whole job is not to, I can't change anything. I have no power, obviously, but is to try to encourage people to ascend to a height high enough that they see the system for what it really is, rather than just seeing it through the lens of all these propaganda terms like capitalism. Okay.
So I think I agree with like everything you're saying. The question is like, one, how long does this last? So, can this turn around? I maybe am more cynical just because I'm young and I grew up in this and I'm seeing like the effects of this. I'm like a white guy in the most liberal place ever. It's hard to get a job. It's hard to get people to take you seriously. And I barely graduated high school because I just wouldn't want to listen to the liberal lectures every single day. And I didn't want to ask to go to the bathroom at 18 years old, but I just did. But like, where does this go? Because we've killed millions of babies. Like, I think we're the most immoral country in the history of the world. And I think that's statistically true. You mentioned you're going to start a new political party. Is that in the aim of that to like turn this thing around, or to like slow down the inevitable downfall of the country, or what's the goal there?
I mean, I just want to be clear. First of all, I can't start any party. I don't think I could organize a dinner party.
Sure.
Those are not my skills at all. But what I said, or certainly what I meant to say, was I'll do whatever I can.
Sure. Okay.
To make that possible. I'll support it. I'll argue for it. I'll explain why we need it, because people should just have an option. I mean, the core promise is that the people own the country. They clearly don't. And one of the ways they don't, it became very clear after February 28th, is because both parties agree on the big issues. And they pick other issues and highlight their disagreement to hide from the public that on foreign policy and economics, they're in lockstep. So that's not a choice. You need an option. And they use the media to do it. I know, because I've been part of it, for 35 years. So I've definitely seen that up close. I mean, I have a PhD in that subject. So they use the media to maintain their hold on power. There's not an antagonistic relationship between the media and the people who run the country. There's a symbiotic relationship, obviously.
So that was clear in the Thomas Massey election. I feel like that was a prime example.
Thomas Massey is like the most moderate, decent, reasonable person in the country.
Yeah.
Who embodies American values in the way that he lives, not just the way that he talks, self-reliance, kindness. He's got 4 children. They all respect and love him. I think they're all married. Like Thomas Massey's actual life, in contrast to others in the U.S. Congress, is a testament to both his sterling character, but also to the rightness of his ideas. You judge things by their fruits. And that guy somehow, with the help of Fox News and CNN, which are aligned on everything that matters, became this like villain sex pest or something. I mean, that was so deranged, so anyway, yes.
Well, the only group that didn't vote for him that didn't like vote for him in droves were the boomers. So the people who are still watching Fox News and CNN. I think the statistics of the demographics were like Gen Z, millennials, and Gen Xers pretty much voted fully in favor of Thomas Massey. I don't even know who he was running against, Ed something. That guy got all the boomer votes, and I think that those people are generally probably the ones who are still watching Fox News. I don't know.
In all these years of being in the, as I said, 35 years next month, and I've been with my wife the whole time. She's never one time said to me, you're being a little bigoted or going too hard on this or that group. People call me a racist. Obviously, I'm not a racist. Anti-Semite. Obviously, I'm an anti-Semite. She never said a word about any of that. The only time she ever said anything to me was, she goes, I think you're being pretty cruel to the boomers. And I was like, can you be too cruel to the boomers?
No.
There are some nice people born between 1946 and 1964. And I said, of course, you're absolutely right. She goes, don't generalize too much. I don't think God wants you to do that. I think that was good advice. But my temptation is, I think just, it's provably true. There's never been a more selfish generation.
Yeah.
I think there are reasons for that. Obviously, their parents survived the Depression and the war, and they just like indulged their kids to the point where they really believed they were the sun around which the universe was rotating. And it shows in their behavior, and certainly in the way they spend their money. It's so offensive to me that I can barely stand it. So I'm sorry to add to the anti-boomer hate, but I just, with some exceptions, of course, but I really feel it. And the fact we have a boomer president, this is our last boomer president.
We'll see. I mean, it feels, I thought we were going to I didn't think we were going to have any more boomer presidents like 10 years ago, but it just keeps happening and happening. So, and like, maybe the boomer hate is too much, but I went back and re-listened to your interview with Charlie Kirk, like from a year ago, I think. And you went on like a huge rant about the boomers there. And I felt like everything you said was pretty accurate. It didn't even seem like it was blown out of proportion.
Well, the neglect of their own children is what gets me, because I'm a father. I can kind of relate to that. I've got a bunch of kids. And, if your kids are, in their 20s or 30s and can't afford a house, and you have a second house and you don't sell that house and help your kids buy houses, like, what's wrong with you? Like, well, actually, what the number of people I have met in my life whose boomer parents encourage them to have abortions when they get pregnant out of wedlock. I'm serious.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people like that. I've met many people who told that story. It's like, those are your grandchildren. You're encouraging your child to kill your grandchildren.
Yeah.
Like that's this, I can't even get my head. That's the sickest thing I can imagine. I actually can't imagine anything sicker than that. There's no sex crime that's sick, you know?
Right. Seriously. Right. Well, I remember sitting at a Chick-fil-A at like 19, talking with a friend, and we were talking about like, I don't know, the quality of the women that we were around and that we wanted to get married at some point. And some boomer lady, like in the table next to us, sitting by herself, looked over at us and started like scolding us, being like, well, you shouldn't be talking about marriage at your age. Go have fun. Don't get married till you're older. And I don't know what I said to her, but I think I said something probably really rude and not okay to say to somebody who's your elder, but she didn't talk to us after that. But that was sort of in a situation where I was like, what in the world is going on? I was like 19 or something. And it was like, people are telling my parents always said, go get married, have kids at a young age, and like, you're not going to be able to afford it, but you'll figure it out. And that's been the case. I'm married. I'm 26. I'm married. We have 3 kids, 3 and under. Oh. Yeah, we're doing fine. It's fun. And I love having kids, but it's exhausting and crazy too. All that is to say, like, that lady felt like so passionate about her evangelism that she had to come over and like tell us to shut up. It's just crazy. I don't know. It just drives me nuts.
So if your animating issue is against children, whether it's abortion or birth control or people not getting married, if like you wake up and you're like, how can I prevent more children from being born? Mm-hmm. I mean, why would I listen to anything you say? Like, that's the darkest thing I can possibly imagine. Mm-hmm. And what's so weird is, and I love dogs, I mean, almost more than anything. However, if you were on like an anti-puppy jag, if you were like famous for being against puppies, most people would say you're really a sick person. Okay.
Yeah.
Americans would recognize that as like grotesque.
Yeah.
But being against babies is considered totally, I mean, we literally have entire political whether it's Emily's List or NARAL or Planned Parenthood, like there are massive lobbies that control half the Congress whose whole point is to prevent children from being born. And it's like, okay, so yes.
Do you think that that's just like a satanic inversion of...
Obvious.
Well, yeah, but that's the point of it. They don't see that you can't have a country to have power over if you don't have children. Like, I don't understand what their goal is with that.
Well, it's pre-rational. It's not, there is no goal. Sure. What they're doing is the goal. So for years... You know, I'm not super bright. So I bought everything people said at like a literal level. And I thought that they really believed that like we needed more abortions so that 14-year-old, farm worker girls could like go to Princeton. And so I would say, I want the 14-year-old farm worker girl to go to Princeton, I guess, but that's great. But you shouldn't kill a baby in order to do that. I realized only in later life, like in the past 5 or 6 years, that the abortion was the point. They made no effort to help the farm worker girl go to Princeton at all. In the last, in 2020, the Democratic Party or was it 2024, rolled an abortion van up to its own convention just so people could like have abortions because abortion, the act of killing, was the point. And that's true in the war in Ukraine. It's why they all support what's happening in Gaza. It's like killing makes people feel powerful. That is the closest to God you're ever going to be when you're extinguishing human life in terms of power. Like that's what gets them high, is the idea that I decide when someone's life ends, or my own even. That's why they love suicide and euthanasia. Right. But that gives me godlike powers. And of course, that's the deal that the New Testament describes Jesus received during his temptation. Where Satan says, bow down before me and I give you all of this. That's exactly the deal. And by the way, all of us face that temptation throughout our, just do this one thing and you can get that in exchange for it. It's the same temptation Jesus faced. And you don't have to believe in God to know that, by the way. Right. It's just so clear. Watching, if you've ever been around the people in charge, the most successful people in this or any other country, it's very obvious that it wasn't worth it. that they lost something in exchange for what they got and that you would not want to be them. Boy, I've thought that 1,000 times being.
I think it's even like we were talking about the church. I think it's even happening, not the highest levels of government, but it's happening in the churches. It's happening in these smaller forms of government in which, because we don't have virtue in our country and people don't care about the truth, whatever sort of power these older generations can hold on to and hang on to, in which they can control people and tell people what to do, they love that. They revel in it. And they like shutting people down and telling people they're not allowed to talk. And so, no, I think that that's interesting. Did you know, like in 2024, when Trump sort of abandoned the pro-life thing, I don't know if he abandoned it. I don't know if it was a conscious decision. I know that Melania book came out during the campaign. And in the Melania book, she sort of promoted abortion. Like Trump definitely made a split with the pro-life movement. Is it because, like, was that always what he believed in, or does this go to the uniparty thing?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
No, correct. He's personally infuriated by the pro-lifers.
Really?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. He thinks it's bizarre. He's angry about it. I remember when that Melania book came out, and I've always liked Melania. I know her. But I just thought to myself, if your wife comes out, a woman you've had a baby with comes out with a book endorsing abortion. Yeah. You say, no, we're not doing that. It's disgusting to have that view, but let's talk about it. Let's go to dinner and talk this through. But no, you're not allowed to write a book endorsing abortion, especially when you had my baby. Mm-hmm. And people's marriages are complicated. His is no different, I guess, maybe more complicated than most. But I remember thinking, I don't respect that at all. Mm-hmm. Would you let your wife write a book endorsing abortion? Like what? Mm-hmm. It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. And I don't know why. I don't know. I think abortion is one of those topics that we're going to look back on, or our grandchildren, to the extent they exist, will look back on and just say, how did they ever go along with that? Even people like me, I've always been against it, passionately against it. But like, why am I not talking about it constantly? Yeah. I don't.
No, people get angry. I mean, they're like people, when you bring up the fact that we're murdering babies, people go crazy about that. But that was the one thing. I mean,
why would that make people mad? I mean, it tells you everything about what it really is that would make people mad. It's like, okay, right. I have no power to end abortion. I would end it immediately if I could, but I have no power. I'm a podcaster. But I criticize abortion. Why would that offend pro-abortion people? Why did they become hysterical? Right. Because they know it's murder. That's why. And the ones who've committed it, which is a lot of them, feel judged, which I get. They're mad at themselves, but also like their attachment to abortion, which supersedes all issues in the Democratic Party. Like there's no issue that's more important to the Democratic base than abortion. That is a fact. Yeah, that's true. Why? Yeah. Of all issues, that I thought it was about like increasing your wages or getting a better education for Black children or something. They don't care about any of that stuff. It's about abortion. And that's how you know it's a religious right. It's human sacrifice. It's just a Canaanite religion. It's the Aztecs. It's the same as it's always been. If I kill the innocent baby, I will get power. That's the thing.
What's the future of the Republican Party? Because obviously you have, I think, and I'm not as understanding of these things as you are, but Rubio and JD Vance seem to be like the next two guys who people are talking about. They don't seem like they're on the same page. I think Rubio seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, more in line with like the neocon perspective. JD Vance is interesting. I know he's influenced by Patrick Deneen and some of the post-liberal movement, which I like Patrick Deneen, and I thought his book on why liberalism failed was interesting. But he's also like pro-AI or in certain ways. So anyways, what's your read on like 2028 and where the Republican Party is going?
There's no future if the democratic process continues. Like, in other words, if a majority of voters in the United States get to choose presidents going forward, that's not guaranteed, by the way. But if that is the system, there's no future at all for any candidate, whether it's Rubio or someone else, who has a socially liberal, economically conservative platform. In other words, like we have to obey the invisible hand and maintain a system where Bill Ackman, gets $7 billion for nothing. Yeah. And we have to do that, but it's, gay marriage is great and like abortion's fine. Right. That's the opposite of how most people feel. Most people are kind of sympathetic to the general outlines of the general outlines of the kind of DSA economic program, and generally kind of Sharia adjacent on social issues. That's just a fact. Most people are the inverse of that. They're the mirror image of that. And the donor class is Marco Rubio. Like they don't care, if your daughter has abortions, but they want to make sure that the carried interest loophole stays in the tax code and that we, fight Israel's wars for it. Like that's the most unpopular possible position you could have. And so there's no future for that at all under a real system. As for JD, I think JD's views are much closer to those of most Americans, not identical, but much, much closer, certainly than any Democratic candidate they're going to field. The question is, how does the proximity to Trump, affect voters' perceptions of him? I think it's going to be hard to get out from under Trump. This is a disaster. Sorry. I don't know what to say. I campaigned for and with Trump and voted for him. So I'm implicated in it. It's my fault too, but it's just a fact that this is deranged. This is deranged. He sent out a Truth Social today saying the Strait of Hormuz was open, but we're not allowing Iranian shipping through it or something. It's like, you're the president of the United States, son. You control the $1.5 trillion military that's been useless. Has no useless in the sense it gotten people killed, but it has not achieved its strategic objectives. And so that you're in a serious position to send tweets like that out 27 a day, the whole thing is too crazy to continue. Honestly, it's too crazy.
Can I ask, so was it just an objective lie? I think it was like a year ago now, Operation Midnight Hammer or whatever that was called, where they said that we destroyed the nuclear facilities in Iran. And that was like the only reason. Because I remember, I guess this doesn't really matter that much, but I was just following your podcast up until that point. And you were talking about how, there's going to be a forever war or whatever that comes out of this, or this is just going to keep going on. And he goes to do Operation Midnight Hammer, comes back, says it was a complete success. And I totally thought, okay, I feel like Tucker Carlson was wrong. And then 6 months go by, and then we go, or maybe it wasn't 6 months. I don't know the timeline, but some time goes by, and then we get back into a war with Iran, even though the thing that he said, no nuclear facilities, that was the rule. Fine. That's okay. No nuclear capacity for Iran. Fine. He said we completed that objective. And then it was over, and then we got back into a war with Iran. And that was when Marco Rubio basically was like, well, that's because Israel told us to, so we have to go to war. And so was that a lie? Did we destroy their nuclear facilities, or what happened?
The lie was that it matters. So I knew that this was fake from day one. I said it. I was attacked. I said, this is going to lead to a regime change. Or shut up, panicking. Okay, now. But I, just had been in that area of the world a lot. And I knew the people making the decision. So I was like, this is fake. This is fake. Yeah. Of course, Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Okay. North Korea has nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons. Countries you wouldn't want to have nuclear weapons have nuclear weapons. And it's inevitable that whether it's nuclear weapons or AI or chem bio or some means of exterminating huge groups of people, every country that can possess those kinds of weapons will. Because if you don't have them, you get treated like Iran was just treated. So it's inevitable that it's not just nuclear. Again, there are lots of forms of weapons of mass destruction, and every country that can afford it will have those weapons, including countries in sub-Saharan Africa at some point, if they don't already. So the point is you have to manage those countries and figure out how you get along with them to the benefit of everyone, but particularly to your own benefit. If you're the U.S. government, you have to figure out how do we manage a relationship that benefits Americans. And I knew that none of these questions were even on the table. It was just about, it was only about Israel wanting regional hegemony, control over the Middle East, which I don't begrudge them, by the way. They have a nuclear weapon. They think we should run the region. We shouldn't have to answer to anybody, and we shouldn't have to deal with these guerrilla movements on our borders. I get it. But that has nothing to do with us. And my advice to Israel, and I said this to Trump multiple times, is manage your neighbors better. What? You have neighbors you don't like? Okay, well, who doesn't? I've had neighbors I don't like in Washington, D.C. You know what I mean? What does that even mean? Oh, my neighbors don't like me? Okay, well, join the club, which is all of humanity. You have to manage that. That's your job. That's why you run the country, because you do a wise job of juggling complex threats. But you can't just get our military to kill everybody who hassles you or is a impediment to, stealing southern Lebanon or whatever your goals are. So anyway, the whole thing was fake from day one. And I told Trump this repeatedly. I said it out loud. I was attacked for it, but I think it's pretty clear that I was right. Not because I'm a genius, I'm not, but because it was obvious from day one. And all these people telling me that like I should care about Iran's nuclear program or Hamas or the Houthis or Islamic Jihad or Hezbollah. It's like, I don't care. I just don't care at all. The drug cartels control New Mexico. I care about that. The fact that you have more people dying of drug and alcohol addiction than at any time in my lifetime. And and no one's doing anything about it. And the cities are disgusting, and the airports are sad, and the airlines treat you like an animal. And like, these are the questions that matter to me. Kids can't buy houses. Gas is too expensive. Like, when do we get a turn at having our concerns aired? Or it's only direct rails concerns. I mean, it's disgusting to me. Okay.
No, it's a direct violation of the principle of subsidiarity, which is, Protestant, Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, whatever. That seems to be the core principle of conservatism, as far as I understand it, is that you take care of the thing that's closest to you. And yet so many people, I've just been interested in this lately, so many people that are Christian and conservative have fallen into exactly what you're saying, focusing on what's happening halfway across the world compared to what's happening in your backyard or even in your own family. And so that, like you've said, seems to be perpetuated by the cable news, Fox, these media companies who are pushing particular narratives hypnotically, and I think probably actually hypnotically in certain ways, and then making like people vote out of accordance with their own interests. Well, okay, so one, has that ever happened in the history of the country? Is this like a particular... Is this happening because of the technological advances in the past 100 years? So like, could this have happened 150 years ago? People vote for things happening in the Middle East compared to like what's happening in, my backyard.
No, I don't. I mean, well, I think it did happen in both world wars. We had nothing to do with what was happening in Europe, and the public was against joining either one of those efforts. I have family members who were destroyed by them. So I think most Americans whose family's been here long enough can say that. It came at huge cost. Even World War I, we were in it for 1 year, and it destroyed people on my family and my wife's family. So I actually have a picture of one of them on the wall in my barn just to remind me of the cost of this stuff. We had nothing to do with that at all. And Woodrow Wilson got us into it for various reasons. World War II, same thing, totally nuts. But the propaganda was so all-encompassing and so rigid. I mean, people literally are prosecuted around the world for doubting one specific, rendering of history. That's so crazy. That's not okay. That's a religion at that point. If you're setting up blasphemy laws and punishing me because I won't go along with your version of an event, that's not history. Those aren't facts. That's a religion, and I don't have to adopt your religion. Okay, that's my view. But anyway, so yes, many times you see this. Mass hysteria is just a feature of human nature. It happens recurringly. But I do think what's changed is that technology is making it possible not only to brainwash people at a mass scale, but it's also making it possible to punish them at a mass scale if they don't go along.
Right.
And I also think there are advances in the understandings of human behavior and brain chemistry that make it a lot easier using technology to compel people to act in certain ways. And one of the ways that, there's a demonstrated capacity, is in killing. It is possible to identify. This is just a fact. Okay. Anyone who says it's not a fact is lying or ignorant. It is absolutely possible to identify borderline personalities online using algorithms and identify them in the comment section, for example, and encourage them to commit assassinations, So that clearly that happens. And so all this talk about, did Tyler Robinson do it or whatever is not, okay, I'm sure he did. That's not really the question. Right. Was anyone else involved is the question. And to watch a bunch of people I know and like, and they've all been sucked into this kind of prima facie meaningless conversation or debate over whether he did it. I'll grant that. I mean, I don't know. There hasn't been a trial yet, but wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm certainly not emotionally invested in claiming Tyler Robinson didn't do it. I'll tell you that. What I am emotionally invested in is finding out what the full scope of what happened. And right. So the question is, was anyone else involved? That's not a difficult question to answer. and it's not a difficult line of inquiry to pursue. It's not being pursued. And so I have a right to be enraged by that, which I am. I'm enraged as a friend of the person who was murdered. I am. I feel that way with the Butler assassination.
Yeah.
So okay, first of all, let me just say, as a factual matter, it is easier than ever to inspire crazy people to commit assassinations without them knowing why they're doing it. Okay, so that's just a fact. We know that. Take a look at what Target, a retailer, maybe aptly named retailer, but just a retailer, Target stores, take a look at what they have said on the record in public about their ability to understand the motives of their customers and to encourage, without the knowledge of their customers, certain purchasing habits.
Yeah.
Every retailer, they all can do this, right?
Well, that was what, I mean, Francis, do you know Francis Schaeffer? He was an author. He wrote about that in his book, How Should We Then Live? Towards the end, I think he got a lot of flack for it. I don't know. It was before my time, but he talked about how particular advertising methods were banned in the 1970s, I think, because I don't know all the details to it, but basically they were using some of these hypnotic methods and people were buying products that they didn't even really want or need.
It eliminates free will, right? And therefore your humanity. If you're not choosing to make the significant decisions in your life, you're a slave. You're not a free person. You're not even really a person. You're less than human. Right. So that's just a basic precept of like how we understand humanity. Right. And free will is a basic component of human rights.
But this is like a new problem. Doesn't it seem it's like nobody, like, obviously there's been slavery before, but this type of slavery, psychological slavery or whatever we want to call it, like that has never happened. And the technological advancements are making it possible in mass to control people. I know my own generation like can barely have a conversation, so they can't even speak really. And that's obviously another sort of way that I think the devil, if you can confuse the languages, and then they're susceptible to tyranny.
Exactly.
But like, what do you do about that? To me, it's like the only answer is to pull the plug. I guess I'll give like a pull the plug on the technologies. I'll give like a brief story. So I was able to go and talk with, this is a while back, with like Jordan Peterson and, who's the guy? Brett Weinstein. And he was talking about the logos and language being the only differentiating factor between human beings and other animals. The fact that we have the capacity for systematized language, which is completely true, which is why Jesus is the logos. But I remember asking him at one point, I was just like, what do you think about like AI and the book of Revelation and the man of lawlessness and the end times? We have surrogacy and the Antichrist. And I kind of asked this like big, broad, kind of weird question. And he basically just said to me, and he said, I don't, he's like, I haven't read Revelation. I don't know all of the end time stuff. And he's not even a Christian, I don't think. But he was like, I wish we would have all gotten together and had a conversation about the AI thing before everybody started to go in and do this thing and develop these things. And maybe he's mentioned to pull the plug or something, but basically the whole idea was like, we don't even know what we're creating right now with AI, and we should have all gotten together and talked about it. This is a long-winded question, but basically like, what's the answer to this? Because these technologies, like what we're using right now, cameras and all this stuff, like we don't know how they work, but they've obviously made people make decisions that they didn't consciously decide to make themselves. Right. And that's weird. That's never happened before.
Well, it's to humanize. I mean, it's literally turning people into something less than people. So, yeah, I mean, we just made a documentary on this. I spent all morning doing the voiceover for it. So I'm like very much thinking about it. My instinct
on AI, a documentary on AI.
Yeah, on related topics. Yeah. So, but my instinct is mass resistance, but that's kind of impossible with drones. So, I'm not sure. I mean, my only solution, which is not a solution, it turns out, but is basically to scold our leaders until they do something. They're totally resistant to our scolding. They don't care at all. Make decisions with no reference to what the majority wants. Time and time, all the big decisions are unpopular with more than 50% of the population. So it tells you that it's not actually representative government. And so if it's not a representative government and there's no way to make your opinions known or to impose the will of the majority on the minority running everything, then what is the answer? And I think at that point, I think this is one of the reasons people are thinking a lot about Jesus and about the metaphysical, because they're kind of out of obvious solutions to the crises of, the temporal world. So that may be good, actually, because it's possible that none of this stuff really matters anyway. If, when contrasted against, like, when compared to eternity. So it may be that. Like, I think for Americans of a certain age, like my age, you spend your entire life thinking you live in a basically just functional country, and then the mask comes off and you're just like totally horrified by the visage beneath. And you sort of realize, like, maybe none of this stuff, maybe I was focusing on the wrong things. Maybe it doesn't matter who's president. Like, you go to the trouble of electing this orange guy who everybody hates. He fights off attempts to put him in prison for the rest of his life. They shoot him in the face. He survives. And that guy joins the other team.
Yeah.
Second he gets elected to do the things he said he wouldn't do. Maybe that's not so much a reflection on what a rotten character he is, though obviously he is, but maybe it's just a reflection on, like, the nature of the system. Maybe we're spending way too much time worrying about who gets elected and not enough time thinking about what happens when you die.
Can I ask one more question? I know we're at time. So the lifting off of the mask, like, I guess, when did that happen for you specifically? Like, obviously there's, Fox and that stuff, but like when I was reading your book, Ship of Fools, it felt like a lot of what you wrote in that, which I think it was prior to the Fox, you leaving Fox and starting Tucker Carlson Network and all of that, and prior to COVID and some of the crazy stuff that just happened in the 2020s. I guess, when did that happen? Was it post 2020, prior to, or was it just a slow unmasking of, like, the things that I thought were true probably aren't?
I mean, it was also obvious that I should have seen it, decades before. But as I've often said in public and private, which is defensive but also true, I was just too close to it. I couldn't see it.
Sure.
But it was, it happened in stages. I recognized that our foreign policy was not what we said it was. In 2003, we invaded Iraq, and that was the beginning of a sea change in the way I thought about our system. But it was really Trump's emergence in 2015 that got me thinking about it deeply, and where I sort of severed my ties to any of that stuff. But the most radicalizing moment by far was the morning of February 28th of this year, when I realized that Trump had joined, or was maybe always a part of, I don't know, the group that he said he was fighting against. It was that last scene in Animal Farm when the pigs are, having dinner with the men and laughing, and like, you're like, wait, I thought you were on other opposing sides. And Trump, of all people, since Trump ran against not just the Democrats, but also the Republicans, he ran against Republican leadership. He was not a conventional Republican. The Republican establishment, which I knew very well as a product of it, they hated him more than they hated the Democrats. He drove a lot of Republicans into the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So it was like Trump was the answer. If anyone was going to solve this problem, if anyone could take the abuse any real reformer is going to take, it was Trump, at the cost of everything. I mean, they did actually almost put him in jail for the rest of his life. And he did get shot. I think that actually happened. That guy turns out to be a quisling. That guy whips around and joins the exact people who cheered his shooting, who wanted him to go to prison for the rest of his life, and did the one thing he said he would never do, which is another regime change war in the Middle East. Are you serious? That's when I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going crazy. Did I miss this? Was he always this way? Was it all this just incredibly sophisticated charade that I fell for? Am I that stupid? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I still don't know.
I don't think you're that stupid. I was in high school in 2016, so I wasn't focusing on this stuff probably the way I should have been. But I think it's interesting that what you're saying. I mean, you're basically saying, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the fact that he basically turned against all the main things that he said he ran on. He said, I'm going to do these things. And then the people who initially, Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro was like outspokenly against Donald Trump in 2016. And so now he's on his side. Yeah, I'll be quiet. I'll end the interview after this because I know I don't have all the time in the world. But like, you've been asked this many times, but like specifically, like what happened to him? Do you think it's just the proximity to power that he had, and the fact that you have said throughout this interview, like people in power, they feel more powerful when they can kill people, and here's an opportunity to kill more people? Do you think that that's just what it is simply, and not that that's simplistic, but do you think that's what it is?
I don't think that. I think,
okay.
I think that there was, he did this against his will. I'm confident of that, having talked to him a lot right before
Really?
it happened. I don't think he wanted to do it. No, he wasn't enthusiastic. I mean, he did not say to, and I talked to him about it a lot. I'm not just saying that.
Yeah.
I was single-mindedly focused on this for 10 years. So it's not just that he didn't make the case in private, and no one around him was actively pushing for it that I'm aware of. Even Rubio, who I think was for it, wasn't like jumping up in cabinet meetings demanding it.
Right. So
he didn't make the case for it in private. He definitely didn't make it in public. He didn't give, a year of primetime speeches like George W. Bush did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bush could barely talk, and yet I was there for the whole thing between 9/11 and March of 2003 when the Iraq invasion began. Bush, now indistinguishable, made the case that we have to do this. And it was a case based on lies, of course, but it was still a serious, coordinated attempt to convince people that this was good for America. Trump did no such thing. Most people, I think, who weren't paying attention were like completely shocked. We're in a regime. We just killed the Ayatollah. Why would we do that? Because he's bad. Because he's bad. Okay, kill all bad people. That's our new job.
Sure.
So, but he didn't make the case in public or private because I don't think he believed it. In fact, I know he didn't believe it. And so, why did he do this? And I can't answer that question. But clearly, we're missing a piece to the story. And I've, famously, Joe Kent, who was the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, said, I think there might be a connection between the Butler shooting and this war. And of course, no one followed up. The New York Times didn't, set a team of investigative reporters on it. Yeah. They did, 5 years ago, they said a team of investigative reporters on the question of, am I a Nazi? No is the answer. But they have the resources to investigate things if they want to. Mm-hmm. There's no effort to investigate this at all, which itself is kind of revealing, so. Yeah.
It's 100 more questions to ask, but I seriously appreciate you taking time to do this.
I've been honored to do it, and I've had fun. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.